today's episode.
The Dettenmaier and Hoffman Show. And welcome to the Evil Teddy Bear Podcast, where we talk about movies and do interviews and stuff. The intro is just breaking down into me just babbling on. So you guys been listening to Comic Book Movie Review Month, and so far we've had some great guests. We've talked about Sky High, we've talked about Daredevil, and we talked about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I figured, why don't we get some people that have been around those kind of sets before on the show? And I'd like to welcome back one of my former guests, and who's been kind of helping out the Evil Teddy Bear Podcast, Limp On. Would you please introduce yourself again, sir?
Hey, hi, Corey. It's Ethan Dettenmaier with Combat Radio, and it's a privilege to be here. Anytime I can barge my way onto your show, it's a good afternoon.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, it's been a while. Last time we pretty much had you on the show, which I guess technically would be the soccer charity event.
Yeah. Well, last time you were part of our press dinner we just did that big celebrity charity soccer invitational for the handicapped children, and you were gracious enough to be a part of our press event or press dinner for that, which was awesome because you got a chance to talk to, I think, a lot of our celebrities that participated, like Adrian Paul of Highlander jumped on, and Gary Casper of Breaking Bad, and I thought you got some pretty good interviews that night, although it got a little chaotic for me, and I started drinking early, but it seemed like you were getting some good conversations in. How did that go for you?
It went pretty well. At some point, I think I was drunk during some of those interviews. So,
well, why should that be any different for you, Corey? I mean, seriously, didn't Ashley Palmer of Paranormal Activity was there too, as well as the cast of Spartacus and True Blood, and I think a lot of them did interviews with you.
Yeah, definitely, and was it Vega? I forgot.
Yeah, no, Jay Tavare.
Jay Tavare, yes, Jay Tavare. He was. I think he was my first one. I think, was he?
Yeah, he was Vega in Street Fighter. I'll say something about him. He's a regular with us on Combat Radio, but he has been a part of every single charity event we've ever done, from our work with City of Hope to the Christmas breakfast we do for the homeless kids every year. He is always a part of it, and he played that soccer invitational. He played that game in his Vega mask. It was hilarious. We were all uniformed up, and he had his Vega mask on, playing power forward. It was unreal to be playing this game, and there's a guy running by you in a Vega Street Fighter mask. Hilarious. But he was also in Pathfinder. He did Adaptation with Meryl Streep, Cold Mountain with Jude Law, The Missing for director Ron Howard. He's done a lot of stuff, but what's ironic is he's always ID'd for Street Fighter, which I think was his first movie, actually, all those years ago.
Yeah, it was. And what's just funny is that I had another guy on the show. I was telling you this yesterday. I had another guy on the show who was, I guess he was doing some stunts or just like one of the backup stuntmen or something on there, and on Street Fighter. And he had a line, but they overdubbed him. They overdubbed
terrible.
him. Yeah. Like he's from Australia, and he had an Australian accent. I guess his accent was so thick that, they had to overdub him, but he's also worked in some like Jackie Chan stuff too, I thought was pretty awesome.
No, that is awesome. It's a shame they got dubbed out, because a lot of times people bring those kind of accents and culture to a piece, and it gives it another dynamic. The fight coordinator on that was Benny the Jet, who also has done Combat Radio, and he has, before he even got in the film business, he fought in like 200 and 250 sanctioned and non-sanctioned fights all over the world. I mean, unbelievable. And then he was the fight/stunt coordinator for Street Fighter, and probably that was the strongest aspect of the film, I think, looking back on it, was the martial arts part.
Yeah,
Just my opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people don't really go back to that film and say it's one of the best films ever in history, but it's still, like, as a kid growing up, it's still one of those films where I can't hate it, because that was the film for me back then. That was the live action.
That's funny. I'm like that with a lot of movies, too. They don't hold up, but for some reason you're sentimental towards them, so you still watch them, you still try to promote them, even though by today's standards, some of these films have kind of weakened out. But you know what? I'm actually here because not because of the soccer invitational we did, but because we were talking comic books, and a good friend of mine that we were going to try and get on your program is a guy I worked for when I was over at Warner Brothers, which was producer John Divens, who co-produced the Blade franchise. And we were going to get him on the show, but he's unavailable. I did wrangle a surprise guest who your audience should appreciate for a few minutes. But you were asking me a little bit about comic books, et cetera, and I had worked for Dark Horse Comics as a writer on King Tiger, which I think did 2 issues, and then Voodoo Man, they were trying to set up with DMX at the time. So I have some sort of backdoor experience with the art, if you will, working as a writer. But you were asking me about Iron Man and some other things. And I think, actually, come to think of it, one of the actresses from Iron Man 3 was at our press dinner and played in our game, and I think you talked to her too.
Yes, Mindy.
Man, I'm just going to hang up. You don't even need to talk to me. You've already got all the cool people, man.
I couldn't find her because, well, I've been cleaning all day, so.
Yeah, it's rough. But no, she's a great interview too, hilarious, and actually a very, very ferocious soccer player. Anyway, back to you. So we were talking, that's what we were talking about different. I had sort of a production angle where comic book work and adaptation of comics to film and TV was concerned. But if you want to review some stuff, I'll kick some movies around with you. Sure thing. Whatever you want to talk about.
Well, can we get our surprise guest on for a sec? Because I would like to hear his opinions on how some of these movies are turning out to be a bit now.
Let me get him on. Do you want me to introduce him, or how do you want to do it?
You can introduce him.
Okay, yeah, this is actually a good friend of mine. He's a regular with us on Combat Radio, and he's absolutely brilliant. He was Zartan, the original Zartan in the G.I. Joe cartoon. He's a very popular guy at the convention circuit, and he's actually got a one-man play coming to Sherman Oaks August 1st that Combat Radio is sponsoring, and that's called Tuxedo Man, and it's hilarious. It's at the Whitefire Theater in Sherman Oaks beginning August 1. I'll let him tell you a little bit about it, but you know what? He'll give you a really good aspect in his work in comics, et cetera, and voiceover, and he was, in fact, Zartan. You don't go wrong with a guy like Zartan crashing your radio show. I don't think, anyway. So let's bring the guy on if he's here, see if I can do that.
It is I, Zartan, who rules the swamp.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we got invaded by Zartan.
Hey, you know what? Zach, I wanted to ask you, now that I heard you say that, did they do any audio tricks with your voice? I mean, your voice is identical to the way it was on the show, except it seems like they ran it through an echo machine or something.
They ran it through an echo machine, and they did that because they wanted that effect that his voice really was strange, and that's how he could do everybody else's voice.
Oh, it makes sense. It makes sense. I was telling Corey a little bit, who blessed us with the fact that he was born in 1987. Bastard.
I can't help when my parents want to do what they want to do.
Yeah, I know. I got you. But I was saying back, I was bringing up to speed that Zartan was certainly the most popular action figure out of the group, but definitely the most popular villain. And you were telling us one day on our show, and I'll let you bring it up with Corey here, that character and Destro hated each other, and I never caught that when I was a kid.
Well, they were always vying for the attention of Cobra Commander.
Which is ridiculous when you think about it in retrospect, because Cobra Commander was incompetent.
Right.
Who voiced Destro, by the way? Do you remember?
Yes, Arthur Burkhart.
Is he still around, Burkhart?
I believe he is. He was a wonderful Shakespearean actor. He was fantastic. He was about, I think, he was about 6'6". He was a big guy, and he just gave that. We all did each other's voices. Everybody did Zartan. Everybody did Destro. Everybody did Cobra Commander. So and Arthur would, So Zartan, he was just booming. It was great.
Yeah, great baritone. In fact, it's kind of like it's as if they tried to get as close as they could to James Earl Jones in a sense.
Well, that's what Arthur used to say, is that James Earl Jones stole my voice.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was a candidate for Star Wars when they were doing the voiceover auditions for Vader. I'm sure he was in the running. But it's funny because you were telling me, and I don't know if Corey knows this, but Leonard Nimoy, Don Johnson, all these great actors were voices on that show.
Well, on in the movie.
Yeah.
They were in the movie, and yeah. So I went down to there was a great little recording studio owned by the Brolin brothers, called Paramount Recording, and it was right there on Santa Monica Boulevard, right by Vine Street, and it was on Santa Monica. And so there it is, and I'm say hi to the guys who owned it, and come in, and there, and I'm shaking hands with Don Johnson, and then I'm leaving for lunch, and I'm waving to Leonard Nimoy and shaking his hand, and it was fun.
I bet, man. That's
Wow.
a good crowd. That's a good. How was Don Johnson then? Was that pre-Miami Vice or was
No. That was Heart of, I believe.
Wow. So he actually did the BO work for, what was it, like Lieutenant Falcon or something, some character
Right.
like that. Right in the middle of the Miami Vice days. Was he gracious to work with, or was he starting to get carried away with himself?
I didn't have a scene with him, but meeting him, he was a good guy.
That's good to hear, because so many people from the Miami Vice days have different takes on it. You never know what an actor is going through when the responsibility of the success of the show is essentially on his shoulders. You never know how that might manifest itself. But you know what? I don't want to. I'm sorry, Corey. When Zach and I get together, it's like two friends
I am loving this. I'm listening to my own podcast right now.
But I know. Just sit back. We'll look at this. Is Corey's going to guest star on his own podcast. But no, it's funny because Leonard Nimoy, man, very, very gracious guy, and I didn't realize he had done the Star Trek cartoon so early in the /70s, and really did a lot of like animated voiceover work that I don't think people knew he had done at that point.
I don't know.
I was going to say there's no real question there. It's more of a statement. Everyone knew him as Spock, and I don't think they realized that he was lending his voice to all this animation in the 70s and 80s. But Nimoy, who perfect voice. I loved him on In Search Of. Do you remember that show, In Search Of?
Yes.
Got Bigfoot in half the time, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, where he goes like, "We are going in the house of Amityville, a small suburb of Long Island," or whatever. He kind of, I miss those days. I miss those days when that kind of television was easy to buy into without such a cynical audience being like, "Look at this horse shit." You know what I mean? It's like,
oh yeah, definitely.
I miss it. How was
the
Nimoy?
internet has ruined everything,
hasn't it? How was Nimoy, Zach? Give us like a Nimoy moment.
A Nimoy moment.
Yeah.
I don't have a Nimoy moment. I do have a Scotty moment.
Let's have the Scotty moment.
Oh.
So I was working at a place called Michelli's. I was the singing waiter at a place called Michelli's in Los Angeles. You're familiar with this at all?
I am. Yeah, I know Michelli's because it's right next to my work at Universal Studios.
So one day I'm in there, and James Dugan's there, and he's sitting with the guy who plays Chekhov, and the guy who plays Sulu.
Wow.
Okay, so it's Scotty, Sulu, and Chekhov sitting at a table. And I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, so I freak, and I'm like, are you kidding? I'm looking around for Kirk and Spock next, So they've just done 3. They're at Paramount filming Search for Spock. They're in the midst of it. And so I'm telling them how much I liked, and Dugan and I hit it off. And when I do Dugan, I'm going to do his Scotty voice, but that's not really how he sounds. But we hit it off, and we started talking. And I told him how much I enjoyed the Wrath of Khan, and he says, Zach, Ricardo Montalban was so good that they should have given him an Oscar, but they didn't, only because it's science fiction.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you something. I just saw that movie recently again, and it's like one of the best. Not to interrupt your story, Zach, but it's one of the 3 best sequels of all time. Godfather, Star Wars, and Wrath of Khan is probably the 3rd best sequel, I think, or one. Definitely.
I got to give it to you.
But honestly, he is so good in that. He's the strongest part of it. And they say he even worked out for it. Like, they said that was his real chest and everything, and he really got into the role and really... Like,
no, I've heard different. I've heard that's not his chest.
Well, it's funny because Shatner said on Howard Stern, of all things, that it was. So you never know what people are really going to say about it. But yeah, it's funny because everyone thinks Doohan, you know, they expect him to speak like a Scotchman, even though he's from Canada, right? It's like, Scotty, how come you're not talking Scottish? He's like, because I'm from Canada, jackass. You know, it's hilarious, you know. But I was going to say something about Nimoy. You had me going on something, and I totally forgot what it. Oh, I've got a Nimoy moment for you. Are you still? Is there more to your Michelli story?
No. That's it. That was, you know, like I just enjoyed meeting him, and I enjoyed discussing, you know, Star Trek and the making of that movie with him.
Yeah, that's awesome, and he's right. I think they would have given him a lot more Academy support had it not been science fiction. Sad to say. Hey, Corey, real quick.
Yo.
How am I sounding? I'm getting a lot of static on my end. Should we reconnect? Or?
I'm getting some too. I'm not sure if it's Zach's or not. Are you okay on your end, Zach?
I seem to be fine.
Okay.
Now I sound fine. So I think somebody hit a plug or anyway. I think we're okay. But you know, here's my Leonard Nimoy moment. Right, a good friend of mine was at a Star Trek convention. You know, he was 12 or 13 or something. Later got into movies, and I'm not going to say who it was because he wouldn't want me to identify himself. But he's at this sci-fi convention. There's a screening of the original Bela Lugosi Dracula, right?
Okay.
The best.
So yeah, the best without a doubt. So he goes in and watches it. And Leonard Nimoy takes the seat next to him, and he's like, he can't believe like Spock's sitting next to him. And Leonard Nimoy's got his popcorn, and Leonard Nimoy starts talking to him, gracious guy that he is, and goes, "Hey, have you seen this before?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've seen it." He goes, "It's pretty scary, huh?" And he goes, "Yeah, it's scary." He goes, "Hey, you want some popcorn?" Really gracious guy. And the guy was like having kind of like this out-of-body experience, like Spock's talking to me at the Dracula screening. Anyway, after the movie, they walk out, you know, they spot Leonard Nimoy autograph something for him, and he gets in the elevator, and at that point he gets in the elevator, and he's with Takei and Walter, you know, Chekhov and Sulu, and they're all going up the elevator together, right? And so I think George Takei was the gracious one who goes, "Hey, so you having a good time, kid?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm having a great time." He's like, "You're meeting everyone you want to meet?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, actually, there's one person I haven't met yet." He goes, "But I am having a great time." And he's like, "Well, we're here. Who do you want to meet?" He goes, "Well, I haven't met Captain Kirk." And Walter Koenig goes, "Oh, you don't want to meet him, kid. He's an asshole." True story. He swears on his life it's true. And the funny thing about it is that is, of course, the cast MO now. Everybody in the cast has had very public issues with him, those that are still alive, right? But I think it's hilarious that Chekhov is telling him in the elevator, "Oh, you don't want to meet him, kid. He's an asshole." And then the funny thing about it is, you know, Mark Ryan, who's Bumblebee in the Transformer films, he's also in the new Star series, Black Sails. He's my co-host on Combat Radio. And I'm not allowed to say, but he's got very close ties to the Star Trek cast. And he says he went on a Star Trek cruise, actually, if you can believe that they have these things.
Wow.
Yeah, they set sail, and all the Trekkies are on a boat together. Is that not like a making of some kind of apocalyptic horror movie? But they're all on a boat together, and they go on this, like, cruise. And he says that Shatner was he says he got along fine with Shatner, but Shatner was a part of it, and it was very animated. And anyway, I have to let him tell the rest of the story. I can't incriminate him without his presence on the Evil Teddy Bear podcast here. But isn't it funny, though, Zach, where it's like Michelli's, that was like the center of the universe. Corey, if you don't know, because you're based in Atlanta, Michelli's is right across the street from Universal Studios. It's an Italian place that's been there, I think, since the 40s, right, Hoffman?
Well, he owned the place from the 40s, but that was the kitchen. That used to supply the other restaurants, and he finally, in 1980, turned it into a restaurant.
Yeah. Well, this place is like the center of the universe because it's right across from Universal Studios. Whenever the Universal people want to jump ship, they go there because it's far enough to get away, but not too far where they can get back, you know, to deal with some emergency. But it's famous for singing waiters. And Zach, where were you on your G.I. Joe career as Zartan when you were a singing waiter? Was that post G.I. Joe? Was that during?
It was during. I started there. I was like one of their original waiters. And I joined an improv troupe called the LA Connection. and I was working the LA Connection weekend nights. We were playing like the Laugh Factory and Helen's Place and, going all over. And then I would pick up shifts at Michelli's and sing. And while I was with the LA Connection, I did Improvision, which was they take an old bad movie and, like we put in our own soundtrack. Oh. And I was doing a Sean Connery-esque voice.
Of course.
And ran into Wally Burr at the bar at Michelli's, and he said, "You know what? We can't find a voice for this character. Why don't you come in and audition?"
That's unreal. That's so hilarious.
The rest is history.
The rest is history, man. It's so funny. It always comes back to Connery, too. Is there a voiceover actor who does not do a Connery impression?
Well, is there anybody who doesn't do a Connery impression?
I don't, in part
so?
because everyone around me does it. And his son, Jason, who's a big director now, I don't do it out of respect for him because it makes him nuts. But everyone else does a great Connery, it seems like. It's hilarious.
I have a favorite person that actually does, I think he does a pretty good Connery. Ralph Garman, does a pretty good, impression of, Connery or whatever, and he usually uses it on, like, Hollywood Babylon, or I think he does, like, the Kevin and Bean show out there.
Right.
So I think that...
there's a...
What were you saying?
No, go ahead, man, I'm listening. It's all about Sean Connery impressions right now.
Yeah, Sean, I feel like everybody has their own version of Sean Connery impression, but, you gotta wonder if Sean Connery... every once in a while does an impression of himself.
Well, the funniest impression was, what was it? What's his name? Doing him on Jeopardy.
Daryl Hammond. Daryl Hammond.
Yeah.
Was it Bill Hartman? Daryl Hammond, right. Brilliant.
Yes.
Just what he was saying. So
I
go
wanted
ahead.
to know what your favorite science fiction movie was.
My favorite science fiction movie. I've got a couple of them that are.
Go ahead.
I know this is not really technically science. It's science fiction. I'm still a big fan of the Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Oh yeah.
Film, movies and stuff that they did. But I really like the movie that they did, and a movie within a movie, basically, they had in there.
They did This Island Earth, right? Wasn't that the movie they picked for that movie?
Yes, it's definitely one of my favorite parts. It's definitely one of my favorite sci-fi films to watch. But
Corey, you understand they deliberately picked bad movies for that show, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I like watching bad movies. That's something that I kind of like doing. Like with my friends, I like to sometimes watch bad movies, and we'll kind of do our own little riffs on them a bit.
All right. Well, then here's the next question: What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
The worst movie I've ever seen?
I mean, what are your top 3 worst movies?
Let's see. The Room. If it's just movies all around, basically.
Let me just give you a quick footnote there. Everyone hates that movie. I haven't seen it yet, but everyone despises it. Okay,
yeah.
What are the next 2? Go ahead.
Birdemic, and that one I really hate with a passion for some reason.
Birdemic.
Yes.
Jeez, I haven't even heard of that. Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, wow, that's good.
That's the movie that literally had me screaming out on Twitter, no less. Now, you can barely scream on Twitter. Like, the music in this is bullshit. I can't believe there can't be a blah, 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 or whatever. And still, they got a sequel. They got a sequel for it, and they got lucky.
Birdemic 2?
Yes.
Birdemic 2.
Oh, hilarious. And what's the third movie that you say is the worst?
My third worst movie. It's kind of really hard for me to kind of pick off the top of my head, but I would have to say, it's a movie that I hate and like at the same time, called The Stuff.
Well, I think, if I ever meet, Eddie Murphy, I'm going to make him give me $6 for another 48 hours.
Really?
That's so funny because the bad guy in that movie David Anthony Marshall was the actor who told me the Leonard Nimoy story. That is so bizarre that you named that movie of every movie that's out there. Okay, now we gave him away out of a coincidental bullet point, but there you go. There you go.
Saw that movie this week, actually. Both 48 hours.
You saw another 48 hours?
I saw 48 hours and another 48 hours, and I was like, okay, another 48 hours. They seem like they're both really just trying too hard in this one.
My buddy is the bad guy in 48 Hours, Sonny Landham, who's also Billy the Indian and Predator, and of course obviously my other friend who told us the Nimoy stories in the sequel, but Eddie Murphy didn't want to do the sequel. He was just bound to the studio contractually, and they forced him to do it.
They must have read the script beforehand.
You know what, though? It's what's, actually I think Dennis Hayden, our buddy, is also in that in a fight scene with Nick Nolte, but all that aside, the movie, when you watch it, it looks like a movie nobody wanted to do. Doesn't it feel like?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, Hoffman, you've got enough experience to know when you're watching something and everyone is forced to be standing on that set, like it's blocked. It even looks like it's forced blocking, right, with the camera. Okay, so you want $6 back for another 48 hours, and by the way, you should have seen that on the matinee price of $3, but that's another story. But what are the other two? What are the other two Hall of Fame?
The other two is, I don't know the other one, but I'll tell you what, The Seduction with Morgan Fairchild.
Oh, man.
Ooh-wee.
Oh, man. You know what I love about...
She's a nice woman, but, that movie.
You know what I love about conversations like this is everyone, like Corey just did with The Stuff and Birdemic, everyone comes at you with a movie that you've probably never heard of, in the three, somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
But,
my. Hold on. Breaking news real quick. I hate to do this, but Sopranos star James Gandolfini, I can't say his last name, died at 51.
Yeah. You got
What?
it. Kidding me.
Tony Soprano is gone?
Yes.
What's your source on that?
It's from IMDb, from the HitFix news.
You got to be kidding me.
Wow.
We've got to confirm that.
And then it's actually, they said it's confirmed by Dateline.com.
Wow. Yeah, NBC just confirmed it 4 minutes ago. Unreal.
My.
Wow.
What a terrible.
I hate to say this, but who do you think took him out? No, I'm kidding. See, I went for the jokes right.
I think he would appreciate that. I think he would appreciate it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think personally, Gandolfini had a sense of humor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's, we can honestly say wherever we go from here on out that was discovered on the Evil Teddy Bear podcast. They broke the news on that.
Yeah. One of my best stories that I've heard of James did, I heard it off of, again, Hollywood Babylon. He actually helped somebody out, while I guess it was like a couple feet of snow, and he tried to help them get out of their, out of their car, or get their car going by, getting, bottles of water and helping them, just basically helping them get home, so I thought that was pretty nice of, somebody with his kind of star status to even help somebody who he doesn't even know,
I know, because when you come across a guy like Zack Hoffman, he just walks right past you and says, go F yourself.
Yeah.
So what a class act, for sure. No, I'm kidding, of course. I don't want I certainly don't, Zack is probably the most gracious guy I know. I certainly wouldn't want anyone to take that sarcasm literally. But you know what, honestly, Corey, what is a guy supposed to do? If you separate yourself because you've got some sort of entertainment cachet, then who are you? You certainly don't deserve any fans to put you on top if you can't take a moment to pass on a little human kindness, right? I don't think that personally, I think he should be expected to do that. I think he should be a part of society like that. My own opinion. You got an opinion on that, Hoffman?
It's just a job,
Right.
It's just a job. You walk in front of a microphone, or you walk in front of a camera, or and some jobs are harder than others. The making of the Sopranos. Those guys must have worked 6 days a week, and they must have put in 14 to 16 hours a day to pull that off, and a lot of it must have been waiting around. And they really did put a tremendous body of work together. But that's just a job. and then you have to be, you have to be a human being in life.
Yeah.
You have to connect with other people.
Yeah. And I feel like it's kind of like the same thing, like with podcasting. We're not all, like, we're a little bit, some of us are known, or some of us are, up on a podcasting kind of, top scale or whatever. Me, I kind of
Don't highbrow us, apps. Don't start taking.
I was kind of saying, for me, I kind of feel like I'm in the middle of that.
Yeah,
but
don't tell us. Don't rub it in how great you are in our presence.
No, I will rub anything I want, sir.
This is getting risque.
He
really, they're confirming it all across the board. That's really bad news.
Yeah, definitely. Well, may he rest in wherever he's gonna go, or wherever we go in the afterlife.
Can I give you some radio? Let me give you some radio broadcasting props on that, though, because, you pick that news up in the midst of a conversation, and I cannot multitask like that. If I'm reading something while I'm talking to somebody, it's obvious to everyone. So you've obviously got some skill set. It's a good thing Zach and I know each other well enough to just have a dialogue going, because I had no idea you were reading the news while we were talking.
Well, I mean, I'm always all over the place. Like, I've also found out that they're completely cutting Mary Jane Watson out of Amazing Spider-Man 2. And someone named Vince Flynn, author of Mitch rap thrillers, dies at 47. So, yeah, there's just a bunch of stuff going on today that it kind of makes me wonder what the hell's going on.
Well, look, it all ends, unfortunately, but it's what you do while you're here.
Yeah.
And, I think Hoffman tackles some of these hard-hitting issues in his new one-man play, Tuxedo Man, which is coming to Los Angeles August 1st through the 3rd at the White Fighter Theater in Sherman Oaks. Isn't that right, Hoffman?
It is.
Now,
it is. And I'd love to bring it, Corey. I'd love to bring that show to Atlanta.
I would like you to too, because, but I have no idea. I have no way of setting that up, actually. So, unless you want to do it at a small bar in front of a bunch of drunk people, then
I've done a lot of things at a small bar in front of drunk people, but never my play.
That sounds like a confession. Corey, you and I will talk after the show about how to bring Hoffman's gig to Atlanta. We're bringing him here to Los Angeles. Well, we're not bringing him. He orchestrated it himself, but we're sponsoring the kickoff night, the Thursday here in L.A., and I can tell you, with the party, everyone in our crew is excited about it because Tuxedo Man's big news, man. It's hilarious. You can read more about it if you go to ZackHoffman.com. But
now, is this about a man in a tuxedo?
It's about a lounge singer that's probably about 3 scotches south of yesterday. And he's given one more chance to sing. He's in Cleveland, Ohio at an Italian restaurant. And you get to watch this guy backstage. Then you get to watch him do his set. And then you get to watch him go back on stage again. That sounds
like it would be a very good documentary, too.
It's not it would be a documentary, except he's a fictional character. So
mockumentary then.
A mockumentary, yeah, there you go. But it's a great piece of work. It's a nice piece of theater, and I'm really happy to do it. It's sort of a gritty comic love poem to Los Angeles and nostalgia.
I definitely can. I would love to actually see that.
Hey, man, the guy's all talent. He's not just Zartan, which is what our audience loves him for. It's also Tuxedo Man.
Or he could do Zartan as Tuxedo Man. No.
Hey, when you're on the
I don't think you'd want to see that show.
When you're doing the convention circuit, Corey, do you get a lot of people dressed up as Zartan? I see a lot. Do you see a lot?
Corey?
Oh, this is for me? I mostly been to anime conventions, so I've not seen anybody dressed up as G.I. Joe before. And it's mostly me working at the anime conventions half the time anyway. But I've seen a couple people dressed as Joe characters before. I I've actually have to say I've never seen a Zartan though. I would like to see some. If anybody is going to Dragon Con this year and to listen to this, dress up as Zartan. Go for it.
Oh, you'll get him. You'll get him.
Yes, dress up as Zartan. I'll be so happy.
Yeah, I need to get a couple of Zartans for our Christmas breakfast we do every year for the homeless kids, because I know we got some G.I. Joe characters coming, and quite frankly, it wouldn't mean much without a Zartan, I don't think. Bring on the Zartan, buddy.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very.
I mean, a lot of, like, what I've learned about cosplaying so far is that everybody's either just, trying to, they're doing it to sell pictures, to make money for school, because most of these guys and girls that are doing it are in college. And then other ones are like actors and actresses dressing up like either like Disney characters or something and doing like birthday parties for kids or whatever. Like I know a few people who actually do that out there.
Well, let's put it out there. For those of you that are responsible for conventions in your area, if you want an effective convention and in turn trigger a bigger turnout, Zack Hoffman is available to entertain your offer to appear at your convention and sign some Zartan stuff. Am I right, Zach? Am I speaking out of school on that? You're available.
You are not. I love going, and the G.I. Joe Canada was probably so much fun.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. It's great. It's great to meet the fans, and it's just a good thing all the way around.
It's tough when you're Zartan, buddy. That's all you can say. It's tough when you're a mainstay character. I was telling my daughter what was cool about that action figure, by the way, is that if it got in the sunlight, it turned, like the character in the series itself, he turned color, like he camoed. And so one night I remember playing with him. I set him on the light bulb of my lamp, and he melted. So from there on out, he had like a combat injury, and he didn't really walk right. Because I tried to melt him into turning into his camouflage look, but it is what it is.
And you know what? I've seen too many episodes of G.I. Joe because I'm going to tell you that you didn't really have the real Zartan. You had the synthoid Zartan.
Right, the synthoid. Wow, that's a great term. Synthoid, unbelievable. Yeah, but those are the days, man. And also, Zach, I think for those people that are nation or even worldwide, if you're a Zartan fan, can't they contact your website and get some autographed stuff? So
absolutely.
Yeah, so people can reach out if you want some Zartan stuff. Hoffman is without a doubt one of the most generous people I know with both his time and his product and his lineage. So if you want something, go to ZackHoffman.com and hook yourself up.
Now,
wow, I should be your agent, Zach.
You thought you were my agent.
Okay, shoot, I'm dropping the ball. I got to get back on it. Okay, yes, I am your agent. As Zack Hoffman's agent, let me direct everyone to ZackHoffman.com immediately. He is available for personal appearances and for conventions. All right, back to you, Corey.
Now, Zach, of course they had the G.I. Joe movies come out. I want to know your opinions on the first one that came out. Did you see the first one that came out?
I did see the first one, and they did spend this is where you can see they spent a lot of money. They put it up on the screen. And, if you have to sort of channel that 11-year-old to really enjoy it. They did sort of use, they did sort of rip off the end of Thunderball at the end with that giant underwater fight.
Yeah.
I thought they really did, an okay job of putting it up. I think they missed I think they missed watching the cartoon and what people loved about the cartoon, which was the relationships. And I think that sort of got translated maybe into the second movie.
You've seen the second one? You've seen Retaliation?
I have yet to see the second one.
Yeah. I don't think it's out yet.
No, it's out. It's actually been through the theaters.
Out. I haven't seen it here.
That's right, but I'm glad I wasn't asked about the three worst movies of all time before you asked that question, because I actually thought, the one thing that's shameful in my mind, just not to interrupt you, Zach, but Rise of Cobra, the stories were there. They did not have to do a lot of research for the script. You've got the comic books, you've got the cartoons, you've got all the character dossiers. It's all in front of you. There's no excuse to have a movie like that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and on top of that, I was kind of pissed that you found out if anybody hasn't seen the movie, too bad. I spoil shit on this show. It's my show. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character is Cobra Commander.
Right.
You know, and I was pretty pissed as soon as I got out the theater about that.
You don't like the casting choice? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was just like, okay, so he's Cobra Commander, but he's Cobra Commander for about like 5 minutes, and then that's it.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it was in the hands of a very strong director for this kind of material. I know that the guy had his cachet with the studio at the time, and that's why they used him. But quite frankly, I mean, imagine what would have happened if that film was in the hands of, say, someone like, provided you could get them, like Ridley Scott or Christopher Nolan or somebody who could really visualize and do the production design of what's required. You know, it's just. Anyway, personal opinion aside, what do you think, Zach? I mean, it's close to home for you.
I just want to bring up what it reminds me of is Mission Impossible, and how awful I thought that first movie was because they made Jim Phelps a bad guy, and I just went, and it took them 3 movies to get it right. The second one was a John Woo film, basically. It had nothing to do with Mission Impossible. And then the third one, finally, when Abrams took it over, he understood the spirit of that IMS force, that they're all together and they won't leave another guy behind. And then I thought the Ghost Protocol was spectacular.
Oh, definitely.
Well, it was definitely the strongest of the 3. You're right about that. I think behind the scenes, a lot of the problem with those movies is Cruise. I think Cruise, he directs them with a man of that stature, typically would, me first, movie second, essentially, what makes me look good, and then frame the movie around that. It's funny, I was watching, my mother is probably the nicest woman in the world. I would have to say I'm biased, but one of the kindest people, right? And I'm with her, and she knows I was at Warner Brothers for all those years, and a preview for Night and Day comes on, and she sees it. We're having dinner or something, and afterwards we're having coffee, and this trailer comes on. She goes, I can't believe they still let him make movies. And here's my mom, the nicest. And I think she voiced the opinion of a lot of people. I think they're just kind of, when you live so much of your life through the tabloids, I think people get tired of you a little quicker than they typically would, but I just didn't think those movies were as strong as they could have been either. Again, kind of an automatic, right? You've got the series, you've got the blueprint. But I will say this: I just saw Into Darkness recently, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I thought Abrams did a pretty. What I will say about him is he at least gives you your ticket value in the film. You don't walk away saying, "Wow, I was really bored."
Yeah, I actually went today to go see it.
And what do you think?
I loved it. I definitely liked it. It did kind of get ruined for me though by one of my my friends, or I'm gonna say acquaintances, because he told me that the guy who played...
Spoil it for everybody.
No.
Yeah.
He told me that a certain character wasn't somebody in there. And I was like, really? Are you kidding me? You're going to sit here and spoil it for me? And I'm like, you son of a bitch. So...
So I actually, to be honest with you, you can pick any movie apart, but to start with, it's a sci-fi to begin with, so you have to have a little patience with it. But I mean, the reality is I thought it was certainly well worth the price of admission, and you know what? You can't say that about everything these days.
No.
So Zach, you're going to give on a scale from 1 to 10. Into Darkness gets.
I think Into Darkness gets. I don't know. I'd give it a 10, maybe a 9. I'm not sure. What I say is, like my highest rating would be to pay full price twice.
Yeah.
Okay. But I give it full price and a bag of popcorn.
So that's how many Zartans? How many Zartans is that? 6 Zartans? 10 Zartans?
It's more than 6, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no,
it's a
good.
9 Zartan film.
But hey, Corey, you wanted to ask us about some comic book adaptations. So lay it on us, man. Let us talk. Let us talk some comic books.
Well, okay. So basically, during the early, like I was telling you yesterday, during the early 90s. Comic book movies were kind of on a downfall or whatever. So you've had like adaptations of like really crappy movies of like the Fantastic Four. They had a Punisher movie with I think Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah.
He-Man movie with him too, which I think that was the 80s. And just like so on. Do you guys think that like of any of the comic book movies that you've guys seen so far from the time you guys probably read comics as kids or something to now, do you think now that they kind of are getting a resurgence a bit, do you think they're doing it right, or do you feel like they're still kind of crappy, or, I mean...
I'll let Zach field that one first.
Okay,
Zach?
I will say this. That the invention of the graphic novel has changed things dramatically. And that's because the writing got so elevated. So when I was a kid, it was basically, Superman and Batman.
Right.
And when they brought Christopher Reeves to the screen, it was huge.
Yeah, it was. It was a big deal.
And the same thing with bringing Michael Keaton. I think did a fabulous job, and so did Tim Burton in bringing Batman to the screen.
Yeah.
But the graphic novel kicked it up a giant level, and that's how we get that incredible trilogy that Christopher Nolan put together. So, are they getting better? Yeah, I think because I think the comic books are different. That's why.
Well, when we were real young, what we got a lot of in syndication was like the Batman with the ridiculous TV show,
Adam West. Right.
We got like a lot of bad comic book fare, and we got it in syndication where we were kind of bombarded with this junk. And I remember at the time, like when Burton's Batman came out, I remember thinking that was in a way it was revolutionary because it totally played it in such a mean, almost dark sense that we were like, well, what the hell is this? It's like we were all so used to almost like a, Adam West kind of almost comic rendition of it all, that it was like a big step. I mean, that was a big move.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what my favorite part in Batman was when the Joker was throwing money to the people of Gotham City, and he told them come down and I'm going to give away $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are no children in that scene anywhere. Why? Because the kids know that the Joker's a bad guy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I just absolutely love that. I just said that was him tipping his hat to the comics.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I think I didn't actually watch that movie until I think 92.
Okay.
Cause that movie came out like 89, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So when I first saw that movie, I kind of saw the Adam West Batman a bit. And I had kind of no choice but to watch it because every time we would go to my great grandmother's house and visit her at her home, or like I think she was like in one of those old folks homes or whatever that they did, that would always be on. So I would pretty much have no choice but to sit there and watch it while everybody was talking with my great grandmother at the time. And so when I saw that Batman, I was like, holy shit, this is way different than the one I've seen on TV or whatever. It's pretty good or whatever. And then like one of my favorite parts is they had, what's his name? His henchman, Bob the Henchman or something like that.
Bob, yes.
And he's like, Bob, gun or whatever. And I think he kills him.
When you compare that to the Fox, 20th Century Fox Adam West version of the character and also the Super Friends cartoons at the time, it's just another octave. And I remember walking into Grauman's Chinese when that opened up, pretty young, but young, old enough to kind of grasp that this was just a different dimension on the character. It's just a complete different level. I mean, we were so used to almost Casey Kasem voicing Robin. Remember that, Hoffman?
Oh yeah.
And it was just like a complete different approach. I mean, it was really kind of refreshing at the time. And you're right about Reeve doing Superman at the time, because although, it has its critics now. I mean, I remember at the time, that was a big deal too.
Yeah.
It was that movie was flawless.
And
It was just wonderful.
And he was the first, I think, Superman, and I think he's the only Superman to really not have his arms out in front of him when he flies.
Well, there's actually, Hoffman is right about the movie in many ways, but there is that rather ridiculous montage where Lois Lane has got the internal poem dialogue going in her head, where she's flying through the mist, and
right.
she has like the romantic kind of inclination to. But I'll tell you, what both those movies did real well, and not to state the obvious, is they casted really strong actors as the leading villains. Hackman is Luthor, and then obviously Nicholson is the Joker.
Right.
Not to mention my buddy Billy D's got a cameo in it,
And don't forget Ned Beatty, who was Ned Beatty was Hackman's henchman.
Oh,
Hilarious.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Great actor.
And then I'm trying to think. Those movies, those first two Superman movies. I mean, a lot of people at some point during both of those movies, like when Superman loses his power or whatever, and he goes into that diner with a fight. I'm like, okay, come on, he can at least throw one punch. He's not that weak. And then with the Lois Lane thing, I could have lived without her having that dialogue.
I think most people look back at that and realize that could have been probably removed. But at the time, I don't know. It's funny because I was so young. I don't remember how much of an impact that actually made on the film. But now when you look at it, it's a little bit hard to take. But I mean, the movie itself, Glenn Ford as his, adopted father, Marlon Brando as Jor-El. I mean, you look at this cast and you're like, wow, those are like Terrence Stamp as Zod. And I think there was I don't know the full lore on it. I haven't really talked about it. But there was an issue between Superman 1 and Superman 2, which is why director Richard Lester, who I really liked his work on The Three Musketeers, but Lester was brought in, I think, to kind of reestablish Superman 2 and with parts of Superman 1 or some bit of chaos like that. But if I can answer your question, Corey, now that Hoffman's answered it, yes, the content is much, much better because the writing's much better.
And that's it. I wanted to ask you, Corey, have you ever read Nightfall?
That's the Batman Nightfall?
Yes.
I've not read it, but that's where the Bat gets his back broken, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, Bane. Which
yes.
It's on my radar. I have not had a chance. My actually favorite graphic novel is The Killing Joke. But
I'm not familiar with it. Should I be?
The Killing Joke is basically kind of an origin story for the Joker. Like, you go back in time and kind of, like, you see the Joker's loose from Arkham or whatever, and Batman tries to find him, and he's trying to basically kind of get his bit of revenge. But as the story goes on, you see how he became the Joker, and it says that he had this wife who was pregnant with their kid or whatever, and then, they end up, a tragedy ends up happening, he was kind of like a broke comedian, who was trying to provide for his family, which, he couldn't really sum up money for barely any rent or whatever. And so he gets kind of forced into becoming, the Red Hood, who he was before the Joker. Now, before he was the Joker. At least that's what it is in the story. And it's a very pinnacle moment. It's a very pinnacle, thing in the Batman lore, because that's also where Barbara Gordon gets shot and paralyzed.
Huh. See, I have to follow some of this. I'm out of touch on it. I was actually quite proud of myself because my daughter made me watch Under the Red Hood this year, and I was I was impressed with that. That mixed with my going to see Iron Man 3, I thought I was really kind of catching up with the comic book Artillery. But now, the way you're talking, Corey, I should go back and research all this stuff. We're supposed to get Mike Uslan, the producer of those movies, on our show at some point. But after that big tragedy in Colorado, the studio had everyone kind of quiet down after Batman.
That whole thing was like we.
I just want to say one thing because.
Yeah. You can go on.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, you're the guest.
Okay, good. Well, good. I just wanted to say that Ethan mentioned Adam West, and I think Kick-Ass was a graphic novel, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was. It still is. There's actually 3 volumes of Kick-Ass. Kick-Ass, Hit Girl, which is the in between Kick-Ass and Kick-Ass 2, and then Kick-Ass 2, and then I think they're coming out. He's I think, is it Frank Miller or Mark Miller? It's one of the Millers. Is working on Kick-Ass 3 right now.
Okay, so in the movie Kick-Ass, I'm losing his name. Who's the guy that played Hit Girl's father?
That's Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage does a dead-on Adam West doing Batman.
I bet he does.
It is absolutely hysterical.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite movies. Actually, one of my favorite graphic novels too. Around that same time, I started reading Scott Pilgrim, the Scott Pilgrim graphic novels too.
What are some of your favorites, Zach? Like, what are some of the sort of defying convention type picks that you could recommend to Corey's audience that you've got? Would you say are pretty hardline graphic novels?
Well, the Sin City series is just spectacular, and and I'm just a huge fan of Nightfall, and I'm glad that that Bane got portrayed in the last movie as an arch villain, but nothing compared to what he does to Batman. And I think it's just a great story. One of these days, HBO will. It needs to be like 3 years. It needs to take 3 years, like 12-hour episodes over 3 years. And it needs to be, the Rise of Bane, Redemption, and or the Rise of Bane, the New Batman, and Redemption. Those would be that. If I was to put it up that way.
Is there going to be a Tuxedo Man graphic novel coming our way?
Only if Frank Miller is sitting in the audience and decides he wants to make a graphic novel.
One never knows. You never know, my friend.
All right. I look forward to meeting him.
I would read. Matter of fact, I'm pulling out my $15 right now for it. Right now, putting it on the computer.
Something tells me it would be worth the $15. Knowing Hoffman, it would be Tuxedo Man, Public Avenger, or he's that would be let me put together some concepts for you on that, Zach. Let me go back into my office after the interview and try to put together some production notes for you to consider. We'll see if we can't make a move on that.
All right.
But genius as always. So that's we've talked Star Trek, we've talked modern day comics. What else you got, Corey? What else is in the art, in the clip for today?
Well, I kind of want to know if you guys have any more stories. Like have you guys met any of these? I know, Ethan, you said you have like a Christopher Nolan story that you might want to tell.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I was having a production lunch with Martin Kove, the actor who plays Sensei Kreese in The Karate Kid, and he found out that when I had made the jump from the Warner Brothers mailroom, I worked evenings as kind of a volunteer for director John Milius, who let me loiter around his office and learn things. And Milius had done Conan the Barbarian, which was a graphic novel, and he had directed that off, incidentally, from a script that was originally adapted by Oliver Stone. Most people forget that, but he did Conan the Barbarian, later Red Dawn, and all these films, and I was with Martin Kove having a lunch trying to put together a film, a 70s cop piece, and he goes, "Oh, I know Milius." And I said, "Well, let's go over there and say hi." And we did. We walked over to Building 81, and Martin Kove, we knock on his door. John Milius's office had a sticker on it that says "Property of the Hells Angels" in those days, and the office was locked. And because he didn't usually start his day till 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the afternoon. So we knock, there's no answer. So Kove goes, well, let me sign this picture of me, and I'll slide it under the door with my contact information. So he pulls out this 8x10 of Karate Kid of him pushing like Mr. Miyagi up against the wall. It's a classic 8x10. You can't help but laugh when you see it because it's like this most villainous part of the movie, and it's like serves as his 8x10. And he writes his info on it, and he pushes it under the door, and we're laughing, and a guy pops out in the hallway, and he's like, what are you guys doing out here? And it's a guy I recognized from when I was in the mailroom because I delivered his mail, and the office is Syncope. Well, this guy's Jordan Goldberg, which is now the co-producer for Christopher Nolan, Inception, and all these things. He started off as his assistant, and we went in there, Crease, we went in there and talked to him, and, we struck up a bit of a friendship with him from here on out, and he's still a buddy of mine on Facebook. We still connect every once in a while and have a couple of laughs, but he introduced me to Nolan once, who, and also James Liu, my buddy James Liu, who I've known for the better part of a decade, did Inception with him, and what I grasped from him, and what Lou will confirm, is that he's a very cerebral guy. He's a guy that's always thinking. There's directors, and they communicate in different ways. Some guys are always trying to get the visuals down, and the storytelling is almost like an abstract component that they may or may not even install into the shot. But you got the feeling when you talk to Nolan that Nolan's got it all worked out. Like he's kind of mathematically or algorithm-wise light years ahead of you. But I will say this, the entire outfit, including Jordan Goldberg, who's now his co-producer, and they just did Man of Steel, very, very smart and also very gracious people. And my phone's blowing up because right now they're trying to call me to hire Zack Hoffman to be the villain in Man of Steel 2. We'll work that deal out after the interview. But if they're smart, they'll hire you, Zach. If they're smart, they're on it. But
they need to have a cameo for an evil teddy bear on there too at some point.
Yeah, well, that's a great villain in itself, right? Let's have an evil teddy bear go nuts on people. But no, I've got at some point where Warner Brothers was concerned because they have Kelly Hu too, who's on Arrow. She had done another show I produced with Adrian Paul of Highlander fame called Peace Fund Radio, and we talked to her quite a bit because she's done. She was also in Young Justice. So what do you want? You want like some first-hand production stories with people involved in the world of comic books, or you want to hear something crazy, or what are you looking for, Epps?
Let's get the comic books going, because this is the end of comic book movie review month, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to get some stories from people who've either experienced their time within the comic book realm or done stuff like movies or voiceovers within that realm or something.
Well, I'm glad that Zach at least recommended a couple of quality graphic novels, because that way your audience has some homework to do that's worthwhile. But for me, my stories, like I said, are all sort of production based, because if you would believe this, even though I adapted 2 comic books for Dark Horse and later went on and did some script work for John Divins, who was doing Blade, and I think that was a comic, I have almost no experience with comics other than the fact that, but you know what though, that actually worked in my favor, because when they wanted at that time, especially Divins of the Blade films, he wanted something very realistic. He actually brought me in to test fire some notes on a prequel to Blade that took place during World War I. Bizarre, like in the colonial wars of Africa, but they wanted something very non-comic book like. They didn't want it associated with the comic books. That was the approach they were all taking. One of the projects I was doing for Dark Horse at the time, they were trying to attach DMX to, even though I told them that Silver was having a hell of a problem with them on this Seagal movie they were producing at the time. But a lot of my production stories kind of come from that first-hand experience. The truth is I didn't have a big comic book. I couldn't afford it as a kid, to be honest with you. I couldn't afford to get into the comic book habit and be buying these things, Zach, what about you, buddy?
And I'm from a generation where that's all we had. You'd get there wasn't really anything on television. There was, they were showing repeats of, Bad Flash Gordon serials from the 40s.
Right.
It was, and Superman, as much as we loved him, he was pretty cheesy. It was like you're saying, the hands in front of him flying, and it was, still. But the comic books, we bought the comic books. We read the comic books. Superman and Batman and Green Lantern and they were our videotapes. They were our discs.
Didn't you? I can't understand why they've never attempted a Legion of Doom movie.
Well, they've never attempted a live action Legion of Doom movie. They did do Justice League Doom, which is the Legion of Doom movie that
I've
they
seen it,
did.
Actually, I'm proud of myself. I've seen it. There's something. All right, give me a little cachet. I've seen that. That's the one with Vandal Savage, and he's got like the plot to destroy the Earth. There's always a plot to destroy the Earth, right? Isn't that? Can you not have a
Yeah, and I want to say the animated movies that Warner Brothers is coming up with in the last 5 years, really some good stuff.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
agree with you. I totally agree. It's actually surprisingly good. I mean, there's a lot of things I can knock Warner Brothers for politically, but the animated machine over there is really cranking it out for sure. What's your favorite?
I liked what was the Superman Doom or Superman?
There was Superman Doom, where it's basically Doomsday, Superman versus Doomsday. It's the death of Superman.
Doomsday. That's the one.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that one was pretty hard for me to, because I've read that comic. I read that graphic novel before. And just seeing it come on screen, even though they're cartoons, was kind of hard for me to kind of watch Superman take a beating like that. And
that's where, where I read the comics, he would go to the Red Planet and he would have absolutely no power, where they'd have a red sun.
Yeah, and it's still like that. It's still like that.
Oh, okay. And it would be great. It would be, fantastic. I mean, here he was, the guy with all the power, and then all of a sudden he'd go to the Red Planet and bang, there he'd be.
Yeah, and Man of Steel, they kind of touch on it a bit, saying that like the reason why the Kryptonians are kind of like us on their own planet is because the sun is much older or whatever. But the reason why Superman has that power is because our yellow sun is much younger. So it's something that they definitely touch upon in the new Man of Steel movie a bit. Yeah.
How were the new Punisher films? Does anyone see them?
I've seen those two movies. I like the Thomas Jane one a lot better than I do Punisher Warzone. Punisher Warzone just seemed like they just tried to have more action in it. But seeing like
I'm with you on that, Corey. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and it's just it didn't really talk to me the way the first one did. If anything, I feel like they should have waited for Thomas Jane, because that's the only reason why they did it, is because Thomas Jane I think he was busy on another flick or whatever, and they didn't want to wait for him, so they got a new actor to play him.
Right.
But they did.
I don't know.
Travolta always plays a great bad guy.
Yeah, he does. Face Off, he played a pretty good bad guy in Face Off. Although technically he was the good guy and bad guy, I guess.
That's right. I thought they had a great time, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. I thought they had a great time making that movie. That, to me, is John Woo's best movie.
Yeah.
Really, you think so?
In my opinion. I mean, like a lot of people like, Hard Boiled or his first movie or, whatever, but I just had so much fun watching them do each other. It was great.
Yeah, they probably had a good time with that. I'm sure I wonder what the rehearsals were like for that movie. Or the table reads, the early table reads,
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Travolta seems like he's an actor that likes to kind of chew up the scene a bit or whatever, and he works great for him. Although Battlefield Earth is a whole other story, which is,
that should have made the list.
You think so? I mean, it's pretty god awful, but is it one of the worst 3 of all time? Do you think? That should have made the list. I love how Zack Hoffman immediately snaps back into review mode. Hilarious. It should have made the list. You should have been doomed. Yeah, that's awesome. It's not.
Man.
an award-winning.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good.
I didn't know how else to put it. You got to give me a. I'm trying.
Like on IMDb, I'm trying to find a list now. They usually have something on there. It's like the worst list ever, or whatever, of movies or that they have up there. I was trying to find one to bring up, but I'm getting too lazy with my research right now, and I'm actually enjoying the conversation.
We will cover the ground for you. There's no question about it. I mean, we'll stray off the comic book topic from time to time, but the reality is Zack certainly has an encyclopedic knowledge of films and adaptations. So, we've got you covered on it, man.
Well, okay, I got one more. I got a couple other things. I just saw the Man of Steel movie, so I pretty much have a lot to say about it. But in the old Superman movies, they have Jor-El in there, not really doing much, but being like a science guy or whatever, pretty much,
Right.
And in this new one, they have Russell Crowe playing
Now,
him.
you can't tell me about the new one because
I'm
going
not
to see it in 45 minutes.
Yeah, we haven't
God.
seen it yet.
All right,
so.
all I have to say is this: Jor-El took another step up, another level in this new Man of Steel movie. That's it.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
All right.
But I would definitely, I would definitely love to hear you two kind of review that movie at some point.
Bring us back next week. We'll talk for a few minutes about it. We'll let Hoffman will see it in 45 minutes. I'll see it over the weekend, and we'll come back and compare notes. I had a chance to go to an industry screening of it, and I passed. So I'll have to catch up through the theater.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, how's that sound, Corey? We'll rate it. We'll give you some conversational points on it.
Nice, and I'll put it up as like a bonus episode.
Yeah, give us a bonus episode. Zack Hoffman and Ethan Dettenmaier talk Man of Steel with producer Corey Epps.
Because
what? Go ahead.
No, I was about to say because I think I might be also doing another podcast actually talking about that movie with this other guy Marshall. I think his last name is Lush or something. He's at the Route 21 podcast. And he's got a whole different opinion. He's like, this is not my Superman. And I was like, dude, it's not supposed to be. So.
That's right.
Well, they had that Bryan Singer take a couple of years back that people have conveniently forgotten, if you noticed.
And now they just remembered it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sorry to do it to you.
No, but
I mean, Zach told me that was his favorite movie. Is that not true, Zach? I'm kidding.
Get off my show, goddammit. Go sit in a corner. No, I'm kidding.
Right. No, I mean, I to be honest with you, I only half watched that one myself, so I can't render an opinion on it.
Yeah, that movie was okay. I got it. I got what they were trying to do for it. I just wish there was a couple more punches in there. That's pretty much it. And at some point in that movie, though, it does get kind of dirty where Lex Luthor basically knifes him with a kryptonite knife, and then just breaks it off.
Well, there you have it. You want to give us an opinion on that one, Zach?
Not really.
Nobody wants to touch it.
I can't say anything about it. I haven't seen it in so long. I don't know what to tell you.
It's those first two movies, like I say, the first one to me is flawless, and even though they made them both at the same time, and I understand what happened. I mean, I understand, I understand, that how they did it, but and that somebody else had to take it over, but after Superman 2, say goodnight, Lois.
Right.
Yeah, that was a little weird, because, Superman Returns is supposed to be kind of, I guess, they pushed Superman 3 and 4 aside, and that's supposed to be, a sequel to Superman 2, which means, after Superman left, she had the baby or whatever, she's like, okay, when did I get pregnant with Superman's baby? Did he rape me or something? I mean, I'm not saying that.
I'm not even following this. I'm really out of touch. I didn't even realize any of that.
Yeah.
No, that's it. And I just think it's, it's one of those things things where they switch the lore. You know, like, well, we're gonna make our own. You know, we're gonna make our own lore here.
Yeah.
And
I just feel like there's some movies out there that, okay, they got the actors right. Like Brandon Routh, I thought was a pretty good Superman.
Agreed.
But there's just the story wasn't strong enough. I feel like it's like with Catwoman, Halle Berry. She's a pretty good actress. How much can you do with a cat though? I mean, act like a cat basically, you know. And the story was, So I mean, it's just some stories are kind of crappy, and I feel like actors try to do the best they can with them.
So Ethan, that's a you sort of question is, what do you think? Some guy walked into somebody's office and said, Halle Berry, Catwoman. And they wrote him a check.
Oh yeah, of course. But at the time, it's funny. It's a tough move. In retrospect, it seems so ridiculous because of the execution of the piece. But the reality is at the time, that prolonged somebody's career. That move. A creative exec somewhere lived an extra 3 months at the studio because he said yes to that. That's about what you get, a 90-day window per decision, right? If you say no to something and it becomes a hit, you're out inside of 90 days. If you say yes to something, it's a disaster, you're out immediately. But, as soon as he said yeah, he kind of prolonged his career. But the thing about it was it was kind of semi-ridiculous, did you guys see Avengers? What do you guys think of that?
I love the Avengers.
Did you see that, Zach?
I've seen it. I own it. I occasionally crank it up just to watch Mark Ruffalo be the Hulk, because I think that's just
he was awesome as the Hulk.
Such a good actor too, actually.
Have you guys seen Iron Man 3?
Yeah,
I have.
You guys stayed after, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I felt like they didn't totally captivate it. Like I thought. Like, if by after you're talking about the scene where he's, the Hulk is giving him a little bit of therapy, and he's kind of going nuts. I'm surprised, and I know why they didn't do it because it's a cost issue, but I'm surprised that the Iron Man's, self-absorbed banter didn't turn him into the Hulk. I kept saying,
now you're talking.
I was like, this is where he turns into the Hulk. It goes, will you please, for the love of Christ, shut up. Excuse my blasphemy.
They could have they didn't even have to turn him. They could have just flashed his eyes green.
Oh, I was going to say, that's it. And they could have done it with a simple contact. It's like, but don't you think, I was like, that was what I was expecting. So yes, I stayed, and, I didn't get totally absorbed into it, but I did stay for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that last scene, my favorite line is that it's like, I'm just not that kind of doctor. That's my favorite line out of that whole movie. It's like, I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm
just not that kind of doctor. It's hilarious. Yeah. But what did you think of? Speaking of which, what did you think of the Thor, Zach?
I liked it. I thought they did a decent job. I thought he was great in it, and it was solid. I mean, it wasn't really, it's not meant for me. It's a comic book movie, but I think they made it for people who are like from 13 to 25, and they really, I think they knocked it out of the park. Same with Captain America.
Zach's a good guy right there. See, that's a true diplomat speaking right there.
Yeah, for me, I feel like Thor, out of all those movies leading up to the Avengers, I kind of feel like the Hulk was the weak link of it. Thor would be number 4 for me. Number 3 would be Iron Man. And then, so on. I think that Captain America would be my number 1, basically. Mm-hmm. Iron Man 2 would be number 3, and Iron Man would be number 2 for me. But Captain America, like, I love the Rocketeer, growing up.
I'm surprised they haven't, I'm surprised they haven't rebooted that. I'm surprised that has, aren't you, Zach? I'm surprised they haven't brought that back for another round. No,
I'm totally surprised to hear that, but I'm really, I love that you love that. I thought it was an okay movie.
No, yeah, I definitely love that movie.
And then, but here it is, and I'm sure you owned it, huh?
No, it was. Yeah, you're right. It was an okay movie, but I'm surprised. I'm just really I mean, if you go to the Disneyland Resort, we do a lot of business there, and we just did a live broadcast from there. They brought back the Newsies, the film Newsies, which is if you remember was a complete debacle when it came out. Newsies was kind of an embarrassment to the studio at the time. Although Christian Bale obviously has bounced back, right? They've brought back Newsies, but they have not brought back, and to my understanding, I was over at Disney not too long ago for a rewrite meeting on a script that's floating around for the Jungle Cruise movie. Interesting idea, interesting possibility, but they have no plans, at least at that point that I know about, and my ears to the floor out over there, that there's no plans for a new Rocketeer, and I'm surprised. The big strategy is bring back Newsies. It's like, why don't they reboot it? I don't get it. They should do it.
The last thing I heard via Rocketeer-wise was when Kevin Smith was doing a Q&A, and this was back when Captain America was coming out into theaters. He was doing a Q&A. They did a screening at some place. It was a Disney event. I'm not sure where. They did a screening. They did a Q&A. Or I think they did a Q&A dinner screening first, which would be kind of weird to do. But then they showed the trailer for Captain America, and then of course they did stuff for, the kids or whatever that were there. But you gotta be like, if you're a kid, like now, and you see the Rocketeer and you're at an event like that, you gotta kind of be like, either you're just there to see Captain America because you love Captain America, because Rocketeer would be kind of like, it's okay or whatever. I don't think a kid would really get it the same way, like I did when I was like, I don't know, maybe they didn't, I don't know.
No, because you know what, it's straightforward storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got the obvious diabolical Nazi bad guys. I think you're thinking with the wrong mechanics, because you could certainly make it work for the level of today's audience, I think. Zach, let me kick this over to you, because you're pretty savvy with your storytelling sense. Rocketeer, how would you make it work today? All right.
Well, it'd be about, it'd be about stealing the technology, and it'd be about the army of Rocketeers,
right?
That somebody was going to produce, and then you have to like up the ante, and so the ante would be that who's ever making the Rocketeer suits has a devastating kind of bomb.
Yeah, you can go something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm pretty sure you can get it to translate. I think personally, if you put together the right artistic production design concept sketches, you could get that thing. You can get that thing across the CEO's desk and into production. I really do believe it. You can get it. You can easily attract a name that your overseas financiers would appreciate. See, I'm giving you the total. This is what people really say behind closed doors. This is how they discuss it.
True.
Forget the script. Will the product get us the name that gets us the overseas financing? That's exactly how, and I think you could get that name, and then you got to build something reputable. I mean, it wasn't really like a bad idea to begin with. It just wasn't it just wasn't a high caliber film. I thought it was interesting. It tried real hard, but was not fantastic. And I think you could do something. Forget the original version, but just go back to the original concept. You could do something and make it work. I think personally.
Yeah. It's kind of like what I feel like they kind of did that with the new Dredd movie a bit. Like they looked at the original movie that they did with Sylvester Stallone, and they're like, okay, we can. Yeah,
I am the law.
No, they were both. I don't understand you, Mr. I don't understand you, Sly. Not at all.
I understand you, because I'm the law.
That is your soundbite right there for the preview of this week's show right there. There's your commercial. I want to point out real quick that whether it's rewriting the Jungle Cruise project or an upcoming Rocketeer idea, I am available for all of it. Contact me. I'll come down to your office and discuss all the possibilities. Yeah. That said, let's get back to the conversation. I didn't see the new Dredd, but I did see the old Dredd.
Yeah, the new Dredd, basically what they did was they kept it in one, they kept the location in one place or whatever. Like, it's not like all over the place. It's not in a desert or whatever. And he doesn't take off the helmet at all, because in the comic books you never see Dredd without the helmet. So I mean, I like.
I didn't know that. Did you know that, Zach?
No. Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of that's what a lot of people complained about the Sylvester Stallone one. Is that, oh yeah, he took off the helmet. He's not supposed to take off. He never, like, Dredd is constantly in uniform all the time, you know. And then on top of that, I feel like they made the new movie pretty violent, which works for it because I mean it gets kind of violent in the comic books a bit. It's the same thing like with Spawn. Those movies, Spawn, the comic book is kind of violent, is pretty violent itself, but the only reason why I think that movie kind of worked itself is because you get the whole devil demon thing going on. Plus, you know, John Leguizamo as a clown.
Interesting. Interesting concept. You know what I will give the first Dredd credit for is I thought they hired the right villain. Amanda Sante, I think, is a really underappreciated actor.
Yeah.
You know,
very good.
Apparently Zack Hoffman was unavailable when they were shooting that because he was the first choice.
I don't know where I was when they were shooting that, but
yeah, he was the first choice, and then when he was unavailable, they went to Amanda Sante, who I thought really did deliver, all things considered.
Well, before they went to him, they kind of went to me, but I was in elementary school. I needed to.
Right, yeah, you were a little young for it. Was that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Baby evil. So, gentlemen, I have to leave this conversation. My cell phone is blowing up.
No, go see Man of Steel, and we'll talk it over after you've seen it.
Done deal. Corey, great meeting you.
You too, and thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time out.
Hoffman, you're all class, buddy. I'll speak to you later.
Later, Ethan.
All right, buddy. See you. There you go. You never know what you're going to get with Zack Hoffman.
No, he's a good guy.
We try not to put assholes on your show, Corey. I know you think we've done that to you a few times, but no, we try to bring you only nothing but class.
No. Having Tyson Saner on the show was okay.
Genius guy.
He's a bit of an asshole, though. No, I'm kidding. No, I guess this would be kind of a good point to wrap up too. Do you want to plug real quick?
Yeah, I do have some things to plug. Number one, obviously people know me from Combat Radio and the charity work we do, but if you go to the Cafe Press /Combat Radio site or shop, Cafe Press /Combat Radio, right now through August, if you buy yourself something, a shirt or a coffee mug, all the proceeds go to the Peace Fund, which is run by Adrian Paul of Highlander fame, and they're going to put respirators into a children's hospital. So if you want to get yourself some merch, which it's not too expensive to begin with, the proceeds go to Adrian Paul. He was a class act. I would also like to plug, if I could, we're pretty much known for doing a lot of outside content. Our show broadcasts on Fridays. There is an archive to it. But if you want to see some of the special features, including the film they're doing on us right now, or some of the special features from different broadcasts, such as like Disneyland, which is hilarious, or some of the haunted locations we've done as well, like the House on Haunted Hill or the Black Dahlia House, there's a new YouTube channel that's got a lot of that. It's Combat Radio Images. So I would say the shop, if I could plug the shop for respirators for a children's hospital, and Combat Radio Images if you have any interest in anything we're doing that may be outside of the framework of the actual show. And then, I mean, obviously I should plug the Evil Teddy Bear podcast and the geniuses who run it, because quite frankly, it's groundbreaking radio.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
Well, I mean, it is groundbreaking in the sense that you were the first one to give us the news on Gandolfini. I can't believe it.
Yeah, I just hopped on it and usually explore stuff. I'm like, oh, that sucks. But yeah, so thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming back on, and you're welcome on the show anytime.
Well, man, I love to barge my way on this show. You've been really gracious for a lot of, I got to say, Corey, you've been first class in supporting our charity events, and that's tough to do. It's not always considered, to be honest, it's not always considered to be great radio when you're a conductor of a charitable message, because quite frankly, today's audience doesn't want to hear it. But there are a lot of people that we're trying to help, and the world very much needs it, and not just our Christmas breakfast for homeless kids or our soccer invitational for the special needs children, but whatever we can do, we like to do. And quite frankly, we don't really have the firepower or the reach until someone like you, and the Evil Teddy Bear podcast gets involved. So if I can say anything, see, there you go. On cue. That was some screaming for you on cue. But the truth is you've been very gracious. You supported all our charity moves. People can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter, all of that. We're there. We communicate directly with our listeners. Whatever we can do for you, let us know. And I appreciate you taking the time to put me and Hoffman, who's a genius, on. Very, very cool of you.
Yeah, it was great having you both on here. And actually, this will actually wrap up comic book movie review month. Thank you, Ethan, again for coming on. If you guys, of course, don't forget to visit the Evil Ted website, Evil Ted podcast with the S at the end of it, .webs.com. We've got a kind of we're setting up pretty much a new site. It's already up and running by now. I just got to finish the guest list on there. I've been kind of lazy about that.
Stay awesome, bro. You're all class, Corey, and we do appreciate it.
Yeah. And then of course you guys can follow me at Core Evil 2013. I keep mixing up with 2014 because that's my Instagram. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram. Again, Ethan, thank you for coming on. And for the Evil Teddy Bear podcast, this has been Corey. Keep on watching movies, guys. This has been an Evil Teddy Bear production.